And I think I would rather, in this kind of matchup, have the black cards than the blue cards. We'll see how it shakes out.
It's Thoughtseize here for Davis. Take a look at that hand. Got ourselves a Valorous Stance, a Dragonlord Ojutai, a Fleece Mane Lion, and some lands here for Mr. Lowry and Yavimaya Coast. Flooded Strand and Windswept Teeth as round number 3 is underway. Of course, Jim Davis, that big number 1 next to his name. He leads season 2, but he's already qualified for the Players' Championship, so life is good for, I believe it's number 42?
Number 84.
No, number 84, excuse me.
So Jim Davis plays a lot of recreational hockey, and I guess his jersey number is 84. And when he signs playmats and cards, he signs it number 84, Jim Davis, which I think is just the most charming thing. It's one of my favorite things about the Open Series.
He's going to be a pretty happy guy, too. The Rangers, last night, they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in overtime to move on to the next round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Our director's a little surprised about my hockey knowledge, but when you have ESPN on TV all day, you just learn things.
Right. Devils missed the playoffs, so I completely disconnected on hockey this year.
That's fine. Here's another copy of Thoughtseize.
An interesting dynamic now with the way these kind of matchups work is before with Obzon mirror matches or similar 3-color mid-range decks, it's all about kind of putting incremental progress on your opponent, slowly but surely leveraging that out of the game. Now with Dent Protector and Deathmiss Raptor to a lesser extent, these decks are capable of coming back in big ways that they used to not be able to. So there is some need to get on the offensive after you accrue these early advantages like Jim is doing here, picking apart Anthony's hand with the Thoughtseize, because if Anthony's able to set up the morph package, it undoes all these kind of swings.
Valorous Stance is going to bite the dust. A Stance Citadel here for Jim and a passing of the turn. This is actually going to be kind of interesting to me because when I think of Jim Davis, I think a lot of like blue-white control.
Dissolve.
Yeah, that's
the card dissolve.
Yeah, that's perfect. And Jim is obviously a very skilled guy, qualified for our Players' Championship last year and this year, but he's done it off of the back of mostly Dissolve decks. So to see him make this leap over to Obzon Megamorph means a couple of different things to me, but most importantly, he thinks that this deck is quite good, obviously, if he's making the leap and the change this weekend.
Or particularly well-positioned.
Yeah.
He feels like a deck like this is good against Esper Dragons and the decks you would anticipate seeing as a response to Esper Dragons. Well, this seems like a good choice.
Lowry with just a land and a passing in the turn, so he can't really get much going thanks to all these Thoughtseizes here from Davis. Davis does have a Dent Protector in hand, which you can see, and he may play that as his morph this turn, and he will. And now he will pass the turn back over to Anthony. Anthony, number 15 on our leaderboard. Typically actually casting Dragons cards was instrumental in the deck building process for Chris Van Meter's win at the Open Series in Syracuse.
Anthony had a very solid tournament that weekend. I think he finished in the top 32 with a list very similar to the one that Chris played. Anthony, top 16 on our leaderboard. No big Open Series finishes just yet, but does a lot of good work in the IQ circuit, both here at the Open Series he attends and in the New York City area where Anthony is from.
And these two were travel buddies for the Open Series in Dallas a little bit earlier this year. It was actually Anthony's first flight to a tournament, first flight in his entire life. The New Yorker hasn't had to really travel via airplane very much.
Be surprised. A lot of New York City people have never driven a car or don't know how to because that's just not part of the lifestyle out there.
It's very strange to me, but obviously grew up in a different part of the world.
Yeah, having lived in San Diego and Los Angeles, I mean, if you don't own a car, forget it.
Yeah, you can't really even get around, I imagine.
No, you cannot. Because public transportation's a joke and everything's really spread out.
Yeah. Dent Protector is going to be unmorphed here by Jim. Unmegamorphed.
Megamorph.
Thoughtseize again. Anthony getting a little tired of this. We like to cast his spells. I have a feeling that Dragonlord Ojutai is going to be going to the graveyard in just a moment.
Yeah, Jim hadn't even announced the Thoughtseize yet, it looked like, because he was a little taken aback by Anthony just throwing his hand on the table, but Anthony knew what was coming.
Now the Dent Protector will come across for 3 points of damage. Anthony has lands and a Dromoka's Command. If you were curious about the power level of Thoughtseize, you know now.
Still good.
Quite good.
In case this is your first time watching Tournament Magic, it's still good.
Here's another Temple. Lowry will scry. We'll see where that top card does go. Looks like it's going to stay on top. We're going to head back Davis's way with his 3/2 Dent Protector. Jim's draw for the turn was the Temple of Malady. You can see his hand. He's got a Siege Rhino over there. He's looking at a Fleece Mane Lion off of the Scry from Temple. He's going to leave that on top, come across for 3. Perhaps it's Rhino time. It is. Coast is very, very clear for that, thanks to all these Thoughtseizes. Lowry left this card on top of the deck, so we're going to find out what it is here, I think, in just a moment as he draws a card. It's a copy of Fleece Mane Lion. Lowry will play Yavimaya Coast. Here is the line. We know he has Dromoka's command in his hand.
And if I'm Anthony, I'm not looking to wait to untap. I think he's got to do this now. Yep.
That's what he's going to do.
You cannot let the Hero's Downfall deck start untapping and able to respond to the sequence, so can't get too fancy. Also, Jim knows about the Dromoka's command from the Thoughtseize, so it's not like you're going to catch him off balance.
Davis will draw. That Fleece main line they left on top of the deck was the draw for the turn. Hero's Downfall in hand, Courser of Proof as well.
Downfall plus Fleece main line feels like a nice turn to me.
I don't hate that. May not have to downfall at all, though, given that that Siege Rhino's bigger than that Fleece main line. So he's going to start by attacking.
Well, I don't think that you want Anthony to go monstrous, nor do you want to have your mana staring at his mana.
Sure. That little standoff.
Yeah, because if Anthony starts drawing instants and you're not casting stuff to try to trick him, it could get bad. I just don't see much of an incentive with Jim having this commanding of an advantage to get fancy. Just kill that thing and get the game over with is my perspective.
Well, Jim will go into the tank. And it looks like he's going to come out of the tank with the Fleece main line. And there's your Hero's Downfall. So he will not get fancy. He will take the line of play that you suggest and just pass the turn back as Courser of Proof fixes the draw here for Anthony.
You know, if Jim's in a position where he's vulnerable to something like Elspeth, let's say, I can see holding off on the Downfall, but that's not really the case in this spot.
Top card is a Flooded Strand. That'll enter the battlefield there for Lowry. Up to 7 it'll go. We'll take a look at the next card. It's a copy of Fleece main line. Anthony with just a Flooded Strand in his hand. His hand was absolutely shredded by those Thoughtseizes earlier, as Davis will draw a card. Red zone we go. Pretty straightforward turn here for Jim. Threatening monstrosity with the Fleece main line. No great blocks here for Anthony, but he has to block or he dies. So.
Yep, he's facing lethal. There's a chump block. Anthony's drawing a Fleece main line, even with the ability to go monstrous next turn. That doesn't save him, even if Jim didn't have a bunch of spells in his hand, which he does.
So whichever way he blocks, he's going to lose his Courser of Proof. The question he has to ask himself is, should he block the Trampler or should he block the Fleece main line? In this instance, I believe it's correct to block the Fleece main line to force Jim's hand on the mana. Also, if you block the Trampler and then Jim has a removal spell for the Courser of Proof, you die because of trample damage.
Yep. It doesn't really matter. Jim has very good information on what he's playing against because Anthony has one card in hand now and has gotten Thoughtseized a bunch of times. So Jim's working with good information. I don't think it matters too much.
There's the block in the Siege Rhino. No activation there on the Fleece main line from Jim. His Courser of Proof will bite the dust.
Yeah, Jim respects the possibility of something like Dromoka's command being in the hand or even something like Valorous Dance, so it's just safer to just keep deploying.
A morph and a passing of the turn over to Lowry. Lowry's top card is that Fleece main line. That will be his draw for the turn. He's going to try to show a little bit of strength here, but not going to trick Jim. Knows you don't have very much, and Jim Davis is going to win game number 1 here over Anthony Lowry. Abzan Megamorph up a game here over Bant mid-range as these players will go to the drawing board, and we will start with Anthony Lowry and his Bant deck.
3 copies of Hidden Dragon Slayer, 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, 2 copies of Stratus Dancer, a Negate, 2 Russian Clerics, 2 copies of Glare of Heresy, 2 copies of Mistcutter Hydra. I'm pretty interested in Hidden Dragon Slayer, Disdainful Stroke, and then to a lesser degree, Stratus Dancer, Glare of Heresy, and Negate. So some solid sideboard options here for Anthony. I don't know exactly how deep he's going to want to go, but I see upwards of 10 or 11 legitimate cards.
For Mr. Davis, we have a Thoughtseize. I could imagine him wanting another one of those after how that first game played out. 2 copies of Master of the Unseen, 2 Elspeth Sun's Champion, 2 Sorin Solemn Visitor, 2 Drown in Sorrow, a Read the Bones, 2 Self-Inflicted Wound, a Dromoka's Command, a Glare of Heresy, and a Bile Blight.
I think the additional removal spells and the Planeswalkers are potent in this kind of matchup. So the Elspeth, the Sorin, the removal spells like Bile Blight, I think those are all solid here. I don't think he's necessarily going to want to go to something like Drown in Sorrow or Read the Bones, but the stock stuff here, the removal, the Planeswalkers, the additional power, that stuff's just coming in.
These players will shuffle up here for game number 2. Anthony Lowry will be on the play. We will very quickly talk about SCG Game Night. If you were with us last round, you saw kind of the debut of our spring collection. And this is where it all really came from, starting with the old kitty cat.
Yep, this is the April kit. We're about to wrap this up. Every month we come out with new pins and tokens to give away in these kits. The stores have a lot of freedom to set up game night however they want to, whatever day of the week, sanctioned, unsanctioned, whatever format, just to get players in their store for some fun and friendly magic. After April, we're going to move to the May kit, which is too late to sign up for, but you see the B here. But if you want to get signed up for June, which is our bunny over here, head over to StarCityGames.com/game night for more information, or contact your Star City Games organized play representative.
Star City Games game night, very popular. Thanks to everyone who does play in that. Thanks for all the stores who are set up for it as well. Couldn't do it without you guys. And if you want to get set up, it's not too tough to do, as Patrick did mention. Get in contact with Star City Games to do so. Gotta get that, well, don't have to get the bee because that thing's scary, but gotta get that bunny.
Don't know, if you're hornet nesting or hornet queen, man, you need a lot of those.
That bee is terrifying. I think just as a matter of principle, I will not be playing any bee cards
Okay.
in Portland, even though I did last time. Actually, what's really going to happen is whatever Jerry tells me to play, I'm going to play.
Also, the two B cards that get played in Standard are conducive to generating draws, which was an issue for you the last time you played in the Standard Open.
I did pick up a few. Thanks for the pleasant reminder that my play is a little slow and not as crisp as it used to be. As a result, maybe I should just play red deck.
Well, I think what tripped you up were the temples and your other comes into play tap lands, because the first couple times you're playing those sort of decks, do I want to be playing my temple or my Sandstep Citadel here, and what's the sequencing with Courser Crewfix? That takes a little while to get used to.
Indeed.
And those decks are a little on the slow side just to begin with naturally. So.
Indeed. Had to really get my brain going there.
That said, if you wanted to avoid the B cards for whatever reason, I think that's totally fine. And you do owe me one tournament with Mono Red because you told me you were going to compete in Washington States. I sent you a deck list several days before the event, more than enough time to get cards, and you failed to show up.
I hurt my knee. I did not skip because I didn't want to play.
It is a critical body part for most Magic tournaments.
I could not bend my leg.
Well, you're sitting down. I don't know, whatever.
No, I woke up that day.
They make accommodations for people who have disabilities or restrictions much more significant than whatever was wrong with your knee, and they play in Magic tournaments all the time. I do not want to hear that.
You're not taking my excuses at all. Look, man, I was injured.
All I'm saying is that if you wanted to play Mono Red, you have several good reasons to do so.
It does seem to be well positioned.
And
I have a deck
my
list.
favorite card that no one plays, Fire Drinker Satyr.
Yep.
If you want to improve the Esper Dragons matchup, that's got to be part of the recipe.
I think that's true.
You got to have a 2-power 1-drop. Have
That's
to have
true.
it.
I could be interested.
Okay.
Can I beat this Megamorph deck? That looks really good, and it's probably going to be really popular.
I think so. I mean, those cards are awfully slow.
I guess Wild Slash is good against them. I need to be able to kill Death.
Heel Cutter, very good against them.
True.
Lightning Strike, pretty good against them.
Okay.
Frenzied Goblin, maybe it's time to dust off Frenzied Goblin.
You're
Not
speaking
totally
my
sure.
language now.
I don't know.
Roast is looking good.
I'll go back to the lab again and generate a perfect 75 card list again.
Okay.
And then have you come up with some excuse for not playing the deck in the tournament again.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad we're on the same page on what's going to happen here.
I already know how this plays out.
This is great. And you know, actually, if I go to Portland, I'll probably have a round 1 feature match, being my no buys.
I mean, that's kind of up to the sideboard. I wouldn't necessarily pencil yourself in for that one.
I wouldn't either.
That's a little presumptive.
I suppose that if I am going to go, and chances of me getting a round 1 feature match are very high, so perhaps I should play your deck. And that's what I should do.
I can provide some insight into what the card selections were.
True, given that you built the deck.
You're seeing Cedric right now cast his 4th Fire Drinker Satyr. There's 4 of them because that card's sweet. Not playing it's insanity to me.
They've all died to Bile-Blight yet again. That card, not as sweet.
So you're seeing Stoke the Flames on Fire Drinker Satyr for the 2nd time this game, and that's just going to be a lot for Cedric to overcome.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Super enjoyable experience.
Roast! So you see Cedric here, he's considering whether or not he wants to Wild Slash his own Fire Drinker Satyr to save himself the damage, or if he uses it somewhere else down the line.
That sounds like a lot of fun. My kind of tournament. I really can't wait to go. Let's see what Anthony Lowry can get together here for game number 2 against Jim Davis. Davis with a very convincing game 1 win.
Black cards look pretty good. Thoughtseize was quite potent, and Jim never was really in a position where he had to use his downfall effects very much. He did kill a Fleeceman Lion with it, but it was a lot better than the blue cards Anthony brought to the table game 1, which just kind of ended up in the graveyard via Thoughtseize.
A forest to start as both players keep their 7. Sandstep Citadel here for Jim. Fleeceman Lion to draw here for Anthony. The second turn will net a Windswept Heath Anthony will sacrifice that, go down to 19. I have a feeling we have a Plains on the way.
You see a little bit of complexity there with the fetch lands. Anthony with Flooded Strand and the Windswept Heath you see here had to make the determination, does he want green, white, and blue or access to double green? And he has a lot of double green in the deck. These lands are not the smoothest mana fixers for multicolor decks when there's no copies of Tundra or Watery Grave in the mix to go get. They're very good in terms of facilitating Delve spells, so if you're sideboarding that, that's very nice. But for 3-color decks, having Windswept Heath and Flooded Strand is not as powerful as having other dual lands that the Khan's color combinations have access to.
Yeah. In this situation, Anthony may have wished that was a pain land.
Yeah.
Because here's a Glare of Heresy.
Jim's Sandstep Citadel is something where Anthony has no analog for in his deck.
No Seaside Citadel.
Oh, good one. You knew it.
Who do you think this is? I get paid to know the cards. That's my job.
I didn't know if you had to know the cards from a standard format from several years ago and sees no modern play.
That's my job. Seaside Citadel's, I could name all 5.
I think I could more easily name the cycle of horrible lands from Homelands.
Very nice.
Wizard School and Castle Senegar and so forth.
I can't name those. I have the image in my head. I can't name them, though. A morph going to come across here for 2 for Anthony. Let's see what the fob's going to be. He does have another copy of Fleece Mainline.
Sandstep Citadel and Friends, a lot more effective at fixing your mana.
This is true. I'm a little off-put by you not thinking I didn't know Seaside Citadel.
I'm just surprised. I'm not surprised because it's outside of your ability level because you just know the card names very well. I'm just surprised because that's an interesting one to just have at the tip of your tongue like that.
Good old Bantland, baby. Used to play it in my old Mythic deck.
Oh, okay. So you have a little experience. Like
Yeah.
that. That's fair.
Well, Mythic had really bad mana, and I was like, hey,
Jungle Hollow is the Naya land, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, got one.
Mythic had really bad mana, so I just put a tri-land in the deck. Here's a Thoughtseize. Stratus Dancer's going to take care of that. You love this card.
I do. I know that Den Protector is getting a lot of burn right now and may end up just being the best of the cycle. But when I saw these on the spoiler, I thought Stratus Dancer was the best of the bunch. Might have to wait for a little bit more modern to really see this card flex its muscles, although Den Protector might end up being quite good in modern as well. We'll see.
A self-inflicted wound here from Jim. I'll take your old Fleece Mane. Another Sandstep Citadel and a passing of the turn.
Still a solid turn for Jim, even though he got his Thoughtseize countered.
Not a bad turn for Anthony either. I mean, he does lose his creature, but Stratus Dancer does some nice work. Protects his hand, Mastery of the Unseen, the draw. In for 3 comes the Stratus Dancer. It's a little choked up on mana right now is Lowry.
Yeah, a lot of copies of Mastery. And this is not a Devotion deck Mastery. This is a lot lower in power level.
It's a very honest Master of the Unseen deck. Davis will untap those 4 lands and draw a card. Does have a Siege Rhino in his hand. Also has a couple copies from Mocha's Command. Now he has 2 Siege Rhinos. Perhaps that's the best way to go. Both these players here tied up at 15.
The problem is right now Anthony is holding up the mana required for Valorous Stance and Disdainful Stroke. So if Jim runs Siege Rhino into one of those cards, from a tempo perspective, it's pretty rough.
Yep.
And the way that Anthony tapped his mana there, sort of signals at least that Disdainful Stroke's a possibility.
Certainly the way that he thought about it, too.
Yeah.
Looks like Jim is going to call over a judge here. He's got a question. And Patrick, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Grixis Tri-Land?
Let me think. The Grixis Tri-Land. I played a lot of draft in this format, not a lot of constructed.
I see. I've thrown the
Crumbling Necropolis.
Very good.
All right.
You're 2 for 2. How about the Jund Tri-Land? If you don't get this, you're fired.
Savage. Something or other. I don't know.
It's Savage Lands.
Savage Lands.
And then there's the Esper one.
Because the name that came to my head was Savage Lands, but I'm like, that's actually just something from the X-Men. So I didn't think that it...
Sure.
I had it confused with something else. Savage Land would have been my guess with a gun point in my head, but I just assumed that had to be wrong.
We also don't do that in the booth.
I do appreciate that.
Guns here, even though we are in Cleveland. Esper one. I think I almost gave it away there.
Not going to get it.
Arcane Sanctum.
Arcane Sanctum. Yeah, not going to get that one.
Unbelievable. Jim looks satisfied.
I was happy enough to be able to pull the Grixis land out of the recesses of my mind.
Yes, the Crumbling Necro. Very powerful in the old Unearth deck.
Yep.
See, again, this is where the age difference. You know
Yeah.
much further back than me.
Right.
But back when I was playing competitive Magic all throughout the 2000s, I know that stuff.
Listen, if they bring back Ice Age Block Constructed as a competitive format, you're going to be really happy to have my knowledge in the booth.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thawing Glaciers is banned in Ice Age Block Constructed, by the way. All right. No, the ban list even.
Siege Rhino got hit by Valor's stance.
And that's the kind of the turn that Jim was a little worried about there. There's some cause for pause there. I don't know if he had a reasonable turn that he could have had there instead, but I guess at a certain point you just got to get those tricks out of the way. It looks like Jim's hand is jammed up a little bit with some expensive cards, so it is what it is, but he was hoping not to see one of those two cards, even though it seemed exceedingly likely that that was going to happen.
Anthony with another morph for this turn. And again, this is what's really interesting about Standard right now, is that in previous Standard formats where morph was a mechanic, oftentimes you play a morph and they know what it is right away. In this situation here, it's very hard to guess what this morph could be. Could be Stratus Dancer, could be Den Protector, could be Death Mist Raptor, maybe. You know, I think Anthony would probably cast that one face up in this situation, but it's none of those cards right now.
So a lot of credit goes to R&D, because the first time we saw a morph, the morphs that showed up in Constructed were just sort of random raw power. Like Exalted Angel showed up in some decks because Exalted Angel was very good at the time. Now some of these cards are showing up in part because there's enough morph synergy that you just sort of want to be picking morphs to fill out the rest of your deck. You know, Death Mist Raptor, Den Protector, Master of the Unseen, all these cards kind of fit into the same deck, and so there is uncertainty when your opponent's casting morphs that when we've seen morph in Constructed before, it's not been like that. Oh, that's the mono blue deck. Okay, that's Void Mage Prodigy. All right, it's a white control deck, that's Exalted Angel. That was sort of what the deal was. Now, Anthony's casting a lot of morphs in. We've seen Stratus Dancer, Hidden Dragon Slayer, Den Protector, Death Mist Raptor. Makes the game a lot harder to play from Jim's side of the table.
Yeah, wait until Sagamore starts to work its way into the equation, because that card's probably going to show up at some point in Constructed.
It's another one that feels like, you know, if morphing is close to a thing you want to be doing anyway, if there's enough handholds there, then it's not like Sagu Baller is that short of being a Constructed level card. It's shown up in decks before.
Stratus Dancer going to come across for 3 points of damage. Anthony's going to leave his mana available to activate Mastery of the Unseen. Jim's morph right now is a copy of Den Protector. You saw in the last turn, he played it face down and then used Dromoka's command to give his Den Protector a +1/+1 counter and to fight Anthony's morph, which was Hidden Dragon Slayer. So both these players a little choked up on mana, but Jim was able to play 2 spells in 1 turn and get in a really efficient turn.
Exactly. That's why the counter spells seem really potent to me against these builds of Abzan Megamorphs. One, because it's one of the few ways to actually break up Den Protector shenanigans, because removal spells are not very good there. And second, because this deck is very chunky on mana. I mean, its plays are between morphing and unmorphing or casting Siege Rhinos or removal spells. I mean, most of these plays that Jim is doing require a pretty healthy investment of mana, and it's hard for him to cobble together 2 spells in 1 turn as a result.
Time for Jim Davis to do a little bit of math, it seems. This is not the first time you've watched Jim Davis play Magic, I'm sure. It is not slow, just calculating.
Yep.
So he will unmorph Den Protector. It'll get another counter thanks to Megamorph. And Jim wants to go Thoughtseizing again, it seems.
And I don't blame him, because his turns are so much predicated on what's going on in Anthony's hand, and it's hard to guess. Now, another good thing that's going on for Jim right now is because of the first line of text on Den Protector, he doesn't have to worry about Mastery of the Unseen just blocking all day long.
And it looks like we're going to have a Dromoka's command here from Anthony in response. We'll see the modes that he does select and all of that jazz. Looks like it might be +1/+1 in fight, but we'll see.
Yeah, Anthony is not really looking to have a damage race at this stage of the game because he's trying to leverage Mastery of the Unseen, and that takes a little while.
Jim has his own Dromoka's commands. Dromoka's commands all over the place now. So that's going to counter Anthony's. Jim wins the fight. His Den Protector is larger. Here's a Thoughtseize. Sylvan Curie added Mastery of the Unseen. And Anthony has been so choked up on mana this game that he just hasn't had the opportunity to say, activate Mastery of the Unseen.
Yeah, neither of these cards are very good for Anthony because he's almost in a spot where he has to just commit his entire turn to master the unseen unless he draws something very good. The flip side of that is he can't really at this point because that Den Protector has now 5 power, so these manifest tokens do very little.
That was a good draw.
That is a huge draw for Anthony. Huge draw.
Caryatid Valor stance.
That allows him to deploy his mana. It gets the Den Protector off the table. And maybe Anthony can start pulling away a little bit with Mastery. Now, Jim's hand's still very good at another Den Protector and a Siege Rhino, but Anthony at least has a momentary reprieve here.
Yeah, Jim's hand is no joke here. It is pretty gosh darn good. Looks like he wants to play his Urborg as well. He's certainly considering it. The question here is, does he just want to deploy the Rhino, or does he want to go to the Den Protector? Both are pretty good in this situation. He's going to start with Urborg. That seems to be the easiest part. And he will go with a Rhino. And pass the turn back. Anthony with a Temple of Plenty and a passing of the turn. Master the Unseen activation at the ready. He's got some blocking to do. Looks like Jim's going straight to Den Protector now. Gonna morph, gonna unmorph. Gonna play Self-Inflicted Wound. And that's a real beating.
That's 2 points of damage. The Manifest token can only suck up 2, and that's 4.
Jim Davis going to win this game and match here over Anthony Lowry. Abzan Megamorph will take care of Bant mid-range. And Davis, off of his 2 buys, gets a win. Number 1 on our Season 2 leaderboard, qualified for our Players' Championship. His tournament's off to a nice start.
Yeah, he's been kind of taking it slow now for a little bit. After qualifying for the Players' Championship, he's been skipping a couple events, but he's here in Cleveland this weekend and off to a very nice start. And in this matchup, I think the black cards are just a lot better than the blue cards. I do think that there's some very strong merits to playing the Bant Shell, and it may be better against Esper Dragons because the counter spells are so potent against that deck. But here, when it's a lot of creatures colliding, give me Hero's Downfall, give me Abzan Charm, give me Thoughtseize.
I'll take Self-Inflicted Wound, too.
Yeah, that was great for